It happened on the 14th of April, 2024. That day, I was preparing to go on a journey that I had planned for weeks. As I packed my bags, something in my spirit didn't feel right. There was this quiet, nagging feeling deep within me, almost like a whisper, urging me to reconsider the trip. I tried to shake it off, thinking it was just pre-travel nerves. But as the time to leave drew closer, the uneasy feeling grew stronger. When I reached the bus station, that inner voice became even more persistent. It wasn't loud or forceful, just a gentle, almost pleading feeling telling me to stop and rethink. I hesitated, looking around at the other passengers boarding the bus. I didn't want to seem foolish or scared, so I brushed the feeling aside. I convinced myself that it was nothing more than fear. After all, I had prayed before leaving. I was a servant of God, wasn't I? I believed I was under His protection, so I silenced the voice inside me, pushed away the warnings, and stepped onto the bus. I sat near the front and tried to distract myself by scrolling through my phone, chatting with a few people around me. But deep down, something still felt off. I had no idea that this would be my last chance to listen to the warning. About halfway through the trip, the atmosphere shifted. The bus swerved suddenly, jolting everyone awake. The driver was struggling with the steering wheel, his face twisted with panic. Without any warning, the bus veered sharply to the left. The next thing I knew, it tipped over. I felt my body lift off the seat as gravity pulled us into a terrifying roll. The bus flipped once, then again. Everything around me blurred, and I could feel myself being thrown around, helpless against the violent force. The pain was instant and overwhelming. My head and chest hit the front of the bus hard, and I heard a sharp crack. My vision blurred, and agony spread through my body. In those moments, I tried to stay conscious, to hold on to some sense of reality. But the pain was too much. Slowly, darkness took over, and I felt myself slipping away into a cold, empty void where time and space didn't exist. As I drifted into unconsciousness, something strange happened. I felt weightless, and suddenly, I was outside of my body. I could see the bus wreck from above, a twisted, crumpled mess of metal and shattered glass with bodies scattered around. But what caught my attention were the figures surrounding the accident. They weren't human. They were beings that gave off an otherworldly presence. And they were divided into two groups. To my left, there were beings that glowed with a soft, radiant light. On my right, there were other figures, dark and menacing. I noticed that souls from the bus, including mine, were slowly rising out of our bodies. Each soul was pulled toward one of the two groups of beings, drawn toward the side that matched the life they had lived. To my horror, I felt myself being pulled toward the dark beings. I tried to resist, but it was useless. My soul was bound, and I couldn't break free. In an instant, I was no longer near the crash site. I found myself in a place so dark, so terrifying, that the very air felt heavy with despair. I knew immediately that I had arrived in hell. The screams around me were unbearable, endless cries of torment that pierced straight into my soul. Before I could even process what was happening, I felt a claw-like hand seize my arm and yank me forward with incredible force. I looked up and saw the dark beings who had dragged me to this place. Without speaking, they began to torment me in ways I can't fully describe. The pain was unimaginable, and it never stopped. It was relentless, and I realized that they didn't care who I had been in life. My role as a pastor meant nothing here. As they dragged me deeper into the darkness, I heard one of the demons hiss, "This is where you belong, with the others who didn't live what they preached." My heart sank as I saw others in this place. Men and women who had once stood behind pulpits, who had preached about God's love and mercy. Now they were here, suffering endlessly. Then I saw her, someone I recognized. She was a well-known pastor from Texas, someone who had led a massive congregation of over 30,000 people. Our eyes met, and despite her pain, I could see a flicker of recognition in her eyes. She whispered, "I was like you. I preached to thousands, but I lost my way." She shared her story with me, and it shook me to the core. She had once possessed everything: fame, wealth, and power. But as her success grew, she started to believe more in her greatness than in the God she was meant to serve. She preached what people wanted to hear, avoiding the hard truths and focusing on messages that made people feel comfortable in their sins. Her concern shifted from leading people to Christ to maintaining her image and reputation. She confessed to misleading countless souls, teaching them to chase wealth, success, and material blessings as signs of God's favor. She admitted that she had an affair with a church elder, living a lie while preaching holiness. Worst of all, she was forced to witness the fate of every soul she had misled. Each one was brought before her, and she could do nothing but watch as they were condemned to suffer in hell. The knowledge that she had led these people astray was her greatest torment. As I stood there, overwhelmed by her story, something miraculous happened. A brilliant light pierced through the darkness. It was the angels of light, the same ones I had seen earlier. In an instant, the grip of the demons loosened, and I was lifted away from the pit of hell. The radiant light surrounded me, and I felt myself rising higher and higher, away from the torment and despair. In a flash, I found myself back in my body. The sterile smell of the hospital filled my senses, and I gasped for breath, trying to understand what had just happened. The last thing I remembered was the bus accident. And now, here I was, alive, but forever changed by what I had experienced. Lying in that hospital bed, I realized the seriousness of the choices we make in life. Each path we take leads us either closer to God or further away from Him. I felt a deep urgency to share my story, to warn others not to take their spiritual walk lightly. We must remain faithful, support one another in our journeys, and live lives of integrity and devotion. I saw firsthand the torment of those lost to sin and complacency. My heart aches for those who believe that grace gives them a license to live carelessly. I urge you to choose your words and actions carefully, to live in alignment with the truth of God. Our lives are a reflection of our faith, and we have the power to influence others. Be vigilant in your walk with God, and do not let the distractions of the world lead you astray. The path of righteousness is not always easy, but the peace and fulfillment that come from a life devoted to God are unmatched. Ask yourself, are you living in alignment with the truth? Are you helping others grow in faith or leading them down the wrong path with empty promises?